Dear Sheikh, thank you. First of all, welcome to RT Balkan.
Thank you so much, Maria. I'm happy to be here.
It's a pleasure having you. I wanted to start from current events, let's say it like that, and somehow I can feel it that we are going to end up in eschatology. Of course, I'm talking about the recognition of Palestine, and we have this series of recognitions, even by Great Britain, which is the state that actually created Israel. And one has to be really politically illiterate to think that this is not going to escalate the situation in the Middle East. So somehow I think they're doing this on purpose. Am I wrong?
Maria, I don't think that there is any sincere change of heart amongst those in the West, like France and Portugal and so on, who are now extending recognition to a Palestinian state. They have consistently in the past been supporters of Israel, and I believe that internally they still remain supporters of Israel, but that something has changed which is required of them to make this step that they have now taken. And that is that Israel's conduct has changed. Where previously Israel was circumspect, sometimes acting clandestinely in advancing its agenda in the Holy Land, in Palestine, and in particular in Gaza. What has now happened since October 23, when, in my opinion, Israel set a trap for the Islamic resistance in Gaza, they call themselves Hamas. I refer to them as the Islamic resistance. Weapons which were being sent to Ukraine somehow mysteriously ended up in Gaza. Perhaps it was Santa Claus who did it. And because the Islamic resistance did not have enough insight and they could not read what was happening, they felt as though this was their chance to attack Israel. Israel knew the attack was coming. Egypt warned Israel 2 days before the attack was coming. Israel was prepared to allow 1,000 of their own people to be killed in order to advance their 9/11. There are many kinds of lies. There are normal lies, and then there are great lies, and then there's 9/11. And this was Israel's 9/11.
And do you think that what's happening now with these recognitions of Palestine, it's also some kind of a Israel game, playing games, because that would give them a casus belli. Actually, the West is giving them the alibi to escalate the attacks
No, I
on
don't
Palestine.
think it's a game, no. I think that Israel's conduct since October 23 is different from previously. Mm-hmm. Now Israel is openly acting in this aggressive way, and public opinion around the world is now coalescing in support of Palestine. In the United States of America, university campuses and American students, despite so many years of brainwashing on the part of the media in America, yet, despite all of that, American students were coming out openly in support of Palestine. And there were demonstrations in Britain and all the parts of the world. And then, as the Western world realized that Israel is pursuing genocide in Palestine, regardless of public opinion, the Western world realized that we are now sitting on a time bomb. that our own people will turn against us if we do not do something. This is called damage control. I don't think there's any sincere change of heart on the part of France, for example, in its relations with Palestine. It's just a matter that the French government is afraid of the French people.
That's what I find actually strange. You have mentioned the pressure from the public opinion in Western countries, which is okay and that exists. But I found it interesting that those kind of materials suffering from Gaza ended up on YouTube, ended up on social media, and we do know that West actually controls very much social media, all social media. And I think they just did it on purpose in order to make the people react. Don't you think it's strange how that happened?
I cannot comment about it because I did not observe it myself. What I can comment about is that there is no sincere change of heart on the part of these countries which are now extending recognition to Palestine.
Exactly, and I'm sure that actually they do know that Israel is going to hit hard because of this.
Now,
is that what they are wanted?
What I want to add from my Islamic eschatological perspective, and I believe both the Christian and Muslims in this region of the world would be interested in learning something they don't know about. And that is that in Islamic eschatology, I have come to the conclusion that there is the Antichrist. The Christian knows the Antichrist. Oh yes, the whole of the Balkans know about the Antichrist. But this is not taught in the classrooms of political science, no. The West says you must keep religion and politics separate. I don't accept that. And so we know that the Antichrist, we know of him as Dajjal, the false Messiah. All the Muslims of the Balkans know about this. And we know that the Quran speaks about the Antichrist, Dajjal, but that he is, first of all, a shadow before he appears in person. And the shadow comes in three parts. When I wrote my book, Jerusalem in the Quran, which has not been translated to Serbian, 25 years ago, I said, from my perspective of international relations, in the first part of the shadow, modern Western civilization gave us Pax Britannica, with a mysterious obsession with the Holy Land, culminating in the Balfour Declaration. And then, in the second part of the shadow, this is Suratul Mursalat of the Quran, and the Muslim audience there will go to the Quran and find Suratul Mursalat and about the shadow. In the second part of the shadow, modern Western civilization gave us Pax Americana. I studied international relations, Maria, in 2 universities. Pax America didn't fall from the sky. There must be a reason why it emerged. And now there is a third part of the shadow which is supposed to come, because there are 3 parts. And I said in that book 25 years ago that the third part of the shadow would be a Pax Judaica.
And when we spoke last time, only several months ago, I have asked you that question. Do you think that we are already living in Pax Judaica? And you were hesitant, and now I think you have changed your mind.
Yes.
Why?
Yes, I was hesitant because I always held the view that the passage from Pax Britannica to Pax Americana required 2 world wars, the First World War and the Second World War. And millions had to die, particularly Russians. And therefore I came to the conclusion that the passage from Pax Americana to the third part that I consider to be Pax Judaica, and history is now moving in that direction, Maria, that this cannot be achieved without the big war, what we call Armageddon, and we call the Malhama. Every Muslim in the Balkan knows about the Malhama. Our Prophet spoke about it. And so I said, Pax Judaica will not come until after the Great War. But then when I saw what happened in October 23, I realized that the Israeli Mossad had set up Hamas, or the Islamic movement, sent the weapons into Gaza. It wasn't Santa Claus, no. And they provoked Hamas into acting the way they did. And because they had no insight, basar, insight, intuitive, internal, spiritual insight, they fell for the trap. Now, I know there are many who will differ with me, but please bear with mine. There's a judgment day when everything will be revealed, and it will be shown that I am correct, that Israel set them up, so that Israel could now pursue an agenda that they required 7th October, for the same way the United States pursued an agenda, and they had 9/11 for it, like taking over Afghanistan. And so now Israel is acting in a different way. Israel wants to export the entire Palestinian population out of Gaza. It's not just those who are fighting Israel, it's everybody, every Christian, every Muslim. Throw them out. This is called ethnic cleansing. And they've killed, I don't know, 60, 70,000 already. They don't care for human life. And they're now using starvation as a weapon to kill people through starvation. And this is not going down nicely at all in the world, because we now live in an age in which news travels all over the world instantaneously. Hand phones can take photographs, and the photographs are going around the world. And so public opinion is rising up against Israel around the world. Maria, all around the world now there's the chant, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. Yes. So now what is happening is that Israel is pursuing an open and a naked agenda of genocide on the Palestinian people, and the Western world is now scared. What will our people do with us if we don't do something to save face as damage control? So now then, we have Israel doing something else in addition to genocide against the Palestinians. What is the definition of genocide? I am in the Balkans. Let me take an opportunity to teach our people, Maria, with your permission.
Of course.
There's a difference between a massacre and a genocide. A massacre can be committed by individuals or by groups, and you don't blame a whole nation for it. That's a massacre. What happened in the Americas with the extermination of the American Indian people, it was not isolated Americans committing it. This was being done by a nation of people who came from Europe. That was genocide. And the blame goes on the entire nation, except for those who separate themselves from it publicly. So now then, what happened in Gaza, it was not isolated events from individuals, it was the state itself. And unless you separate yourself from the state, you are part and parcel of it. This is genocide. But what happened in Srebrenica was not the nation, the Serbian nation, the Orthodox Christian nation was not attempting to exterminate Muslims. So why can't our people recognize what is wrong with their thinking? How many times do I have to explain to them? If you say that Srebrenica was a genocide, then you blame the entire Orthodox Christian people of this region.
Well, maybe someone is not allowing them to recognize that fact. And I have in mind Erdogan, who is most influential Muslim in this region.
Whoever it is who is influencing them, my duty is to teach them. They are my people. They are my people. We are Muslims. And my duty is to teach them. Every single Orthodox Christian I have met in Belgrade has condemned what happened in Srebrenica. And they say, we wish to find out who it is who is responsible and punish them. That's not genocide. But yet they still insist, no, 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 you have to say it's genocide. You have to condemn it as genocide. So now then, what is happening in Gaza is genocide. But Israel doesn't care about public opinion. The United Nations can declare genocide. Israel doesn't care. So now the Western world is waking up. This is a different Israel. This is not an Israel who is still a partner of ours. No, no, this is an Israel who is pursuing her agenda regardless of how we suffer. Then Israel did something more than that. Israel launched an attack on Iran and then got the United States to follow an attack on Iran. And the Israelis said, yes, we did it. They didn't hide it. In the past, they would attack, and they never said, we did it. But this time said, we did it. They killed so many Iranian nuclear scientists. They killed the chief of staff of the Iranian armed forces. They killed the head of the Revolutionary Guards. All right? And yes, Iran did respond with missiles and so on, and we give credit to Iran for that. But Israel says, we're going to do it again. And the United States said, we'll do it again.
So basically, Israel is doing whatever it wants.
Whatever Israel wants to do. But something else just happened. That is that Qatar has the largest American military base in the whole region. Qatar is like Kosovo. And Qatar would expect that if we are hosting the biggest American military base in the region, it should offer us some measure of protection.
And happened what?
And what happened was that Israel launched an attack on Qatar to attack the Islamic resistance in Qatar. And the United States never lifted even a little finger to stop Israel. And the Israeli attack on Qatar sent a message not only to Qatar and to the Arab world, but also it sent a message to Uncle Sam. It said to Trump, we are now the boss over here. You are not the boss anymore. And so, Maria, from the perspective of Islamic eschatology, and I have to speak gently because our people are not familiar with this kind of analysis. It's not taught in the institutions of Islamic learning. This is new knowledge for them, and we only hope and pray that it'll sink in eventually. What is happening, Maria, is that the attack on Gaza, brazen genocide, the attack on Iran, killing so many, destroying nuclear plants and so on, and the attack on Qatar, all confirm that we are now at the location of the beginning of Pax Judaica. That there are three parts of the shadow. In Taliku, this is the verse of the Quran, if you allow me to recite it in Arabic.
Sure.
In Taliku ila ziblin zi salasi shu'ab. This is known as a verse which has to be interpreted in order to be understood. The Bible is like that as well. When we interpret the Quran, there's no need for any boxing gloves. Only the Lord God can confirm an interpretation is correct. But if I interpret the Quran and my interpretation is correct, then, Maria, this is truth. And truth will prevail. I will die, but the truth will prevail. If my interpretation is wrong, it'll go down the river of no return. Tomorrow it'll be forgotten. So I am saying, this is my interpretation of the Quran, that we are now located in the third part of the shadow, which is now beginning. Pax Americana is going into the sunset. Trump cannot make America great again.
And dollar?
And Israel is now taking over from the United States in the Middle East. And so what are the implications for the world? The implications for the world is that Israel is not going to tolerate all forces which are obstacles to her. And one of the first obstacles that Israel is going to deal with is the United Nations organization, which is increasingly now turning against Israel, and United States cannot prevent it. And so I am suggesting that the United Nations is not going to survive. I am suggesting that Israel is going to plan for the United States to collapse, the United Nations, sorry, and it's simple. All that you have to do is to withdraw the funding, and the United Nations will collapse. This is the first implication for me of the emergence of Pax Judaica.
I have listened to your lectures, and when you speak about Pax Britannica, then Pax Americana, and now Pax Judaica, you always emphasize that the state who is actually in charge, the ruling state, has to have a ruling currency, dominant currency. We had British pound, we had American dollar, but Israel doesn't have a strong currency. So how they are going to solve that problem if they really intend to rule the world?
I commend you, Maria. You're a thinker. That's right. Pax Judaica cannot be established with the United States dollar as the international currency. So the United States dollar has to give way in the same way as the British pound gave way. What is to come after the US dollar? Pax Judaica cannot be established so long as Pakistan is a nuclear power. Pakistan has to be denuclearized. How will Israel denuclearize Pakistan? Maria, we're going to need another interview to deal with this. But I have suggested long years ago, 25 years ago, when I started lecturing on Islam and the international monetary system, that at the heart of the monetary system is the effort to take away real money from the market. Real money being money with intrinsic value. Money which has the capacity not only to function as a medium of exchange, not only to function as a measure of value, but most importantly of all, money which can successfully function as a store of value, That if I'm working and I'm earning a salary every month, and with that salary I can buy a camel, then 5 years later, if I take that salary out of my pillow, I can still buy the camel. 10 years later, I can still buy the camel because the money is faithfully storing the value. But when you take real money out of the market and you replace it with fictitious money, then the value of the money can be manipulated. And then suddenly, after 5 years, my salary, which could have bought a camel, can't buy a camel anymore. It can only buy a donkey. So something is happening. Another 5 years later, and I can't buy a donkey anymore. I can only buy a goat. And 5 years later, you reach like Bangladesh and you reach like Indonesia and most of Africa. You can't buy a goat anymore. Instead of buying a camel, you can only buy a chicken. Somebody is ripping me off.
Who?
All the wealth of the world is being sucked like a vacuum from the masses to one part of the world, which is becoming filthy rich. And as they accumulate the wealth of the world, everybody wants to join them. People who have less than even 2 peanuts in their head, oh no, we want to be part of them, they are the rich. But people who have faith in their heart don't worship the rich. People who have faith in their heart are people who stand up for justice, not to become wealthy. This is my message to the Balkans. You are a people with faith in your heart. You worship the Lord God. You have a religious personality. You have a spiritual heart. So you don't worship money. You stand up for truth. So they gave us paper money. And then they gave us electronic money. And then they gave us the petrodollar. I don't have the time to take you on a course on international monetary economics. But eventually, central bank digital currency is meant to bring all of these currencies together on a platform so that eventually they can dismiss all currencies.
Cashless society.
With one currency, one central bank digital currency is what Pax Judaica needs. And they're moving in that direction.
And what you're saying now reminds me very much of Davos Agenda 2030. They have that idea of cashless society, digital ID, total control of the whole world. And it's weird because their main philosopher is a Jew from Israel, Noah Harari. Now I'm thinking, did they actually came up with a date 2030 randomly, or that's a setup date when that is going to occur? And is that a part of the same story?
On the one hand, you have the Western world dominated by the Zionist movement with a banking system that they control, which is moving in the direction, as I just said, to eventually have central bank digital currencies for all over the world, which will eventually provide a platform for them to move to one central bank digital currency controlled by Israel. That will be the successor. First of all, you had the British sterling pound with Pax Britannica. Then you had the US dollar, and then you had the petrodollar with Pax Americana. So what Pax Judaica wants is one digital currency for all of mankind controlled by Israel.
I have to just to put you an idea into your head. Maybe you will think about it later, but that corresponds very well with this detail from Christian eschatology, the sign of the beast.
That's right.
Yeah.
There's much in common between Christian eschatology and Islamic eschatology. I have to thank the Lord God. He blessed me to pioneer Islamic eschatology. So our people are not familiar with this. That's why there's so much resistance to my thought, because they're not familiar with this. But I'm persevering. I do not comment on Christian eschatology. I said, let the Christian teach his eschatology, and I will learn from him. One of the reasons why I'm here in the Balkans is because my study of the Quran has led me to the conclusion that the Quran is telling us that in the end time, and we are now in the end time, there is going to be a friendship and alliance between two people. And this friendship and alliance is going to take us into the end time, and this friendship and alliance is going to respond to Gaza, to genocide in Gaza. The Muslims in the Balkans are standing up, and I'm proud and happy to see how the Muslims in the Balkans are standing up fiercely, courageously in support of Gaza. And they don't care two peanuts whether NATO approves or disapproves. We are supporting Gaza. I'm happy with this. But they need to know that in the response to Gaza, response to Israel, response to Israel's oppression, the Quran speaks about two people coming together. And that is the followers of Prophet Muhammad, Allah's blessings be upon him, and the followers of the Messiah, Jesus.
And we can see that now in Ukraine front, where you have Muslim fighters fighting, of course, on the Russian side with the Allahu Akbar, how do you say that?
Yes, the Chechen fighters are fighting in Ukraine,
to Allah.
And we are proud of them.
And you have this very popular song about Putin in Palestine, which is praising Putin. Yes, and it's a great hit.
So
but
now then,
someone actually doesn't want that unity to happen. The West doesn't want that unity to happen. And you have mentioned Srebrenica, and that is maybe why we still have this Memorial Day of so-called genocide. Someone doesn't want that reconciliation to happen. And did we have the Chechnya war because of that? And the Dagestan radicalizing Muslims because of that? To make the gap between Muslims and Orthodox.
They plan their plans.
Yeah.
And he plans his plans. And he's the best of planners. That's why I'm here in the Balkans, to teach my people that in responding to Gaza, responding to genocide in Gaza, responding to Israel acting like a bully, that I am now the boss of the world, that there is a response in the Quran. And the response in the Quran is that there are Christian people who are going to be closest in love and affection for you Muslims. And those Christians are not the ones who follow Santa Claus. Those Christians are here in the Balkans and in Russia, the Orthodox Christian world. What do you say of a president of Russia who picks up the Quran and kisses it in public? Don't you understand that here are a people who are destined to be closest in love and affection for you? But history is history with bloodshed. Many things have occurred in the past which have put a block between our two peoples, because I don't belong to the Balkans. I come from the island of Trinidad in the Caribbean. So I'm able to come to the Balkans without this baggage on my shoulders, and to teach our people the past is the past. Look to the future, and the Quran is going to guide you to the future, that these two people have to come together in friendship and alliance, because this is destined from the Quran.
I would like to go back to Israel, because they are the one who are taking the shots right now. They are actually in charge, and they are ruling the world events. Do you think that there is eschatological motivation in Israel politics, in Netanyahu politics? We have this organization called the Third Temple, which is government funded, and it's in charge to make the Third Temple, and you will explain to our viewers what does that mean in their eschatology. We also have this viral interview between a rabbi and a young Netanyahu, when the rabbi is scolding Netanyahu, saying, "Where is the Messiah?" And he answered, "We are working on it, we are working on it." So do you think there is an eschatological motive in Netanyahu's politics? And let me remind you that this morning when British recognition of Palestine happened, that Netanyahu explicitly mentioned the end of the world will be coming. And I don't think he's joking.
To answer you, I have to go to the Quran, to Gog and Magog. And it is such a pity that although the Quran speaks on the subject of Gog and Magog, our people, unfortunately, choose a different route to study the subject. They go to the Hadith, whereas I go to the Quran. And when I go to the Quran, I find that the Quran speaks of a town, and the Lord God destroyed that town, and he expelled the people of the town. And then he placed a ban on them that they could never return to reclaim this town as their own until Gog and Magog are released. And when they are released, they will spread out all over the world. And with their indestructible power, they'll take control of power in the world. And this, Maria, is an event which will occur only once in history. I'm now addressing the young ones in the Balkans. Put on your thinking caps. The elders sometimes don't think, but the young ones, put on your thinking cap. Which town is this? When they spread out all over the world and they take control of the power of the world, they use their power to oppress. They use their power to corrupt. They are an evil people. Anything they touch, they transform it into something evil, nasty. These people, Gog and Magog, will then bring these people back to that town. 2,000 years after they had been expelled. Which town is it? My eschatology and that of my teacher and his teacher is that the town is Jerusalem. How do I know that the town is Jerusalem? Answer, our prophet said it. He says that the Lord God will destroy Gog and Magog in Jerusalem. He said that the Lord God will destroy Gog and Magog in Jerusalem. Jerusalem. And therefore, the town is Jerusalem. And therefore, the people who were expelled were the Jews. And they were banned from returning to Jerusalem for 2,000 years. So who brought them back? Who brought the Jews back to Jerusalem to reclaim it as their own? Is the Quran silent on this most fantastic event in human religious history? Is the Quran silent? Or is it that you are not studying the Quran? The Quran is not silent. The Quran is saying that those who brought the Jews back to Jerusalem to reclaim it as their own, 2,000 years after they had been expelled and banned from returning, they are Gog and Magog. And so Gog and Magog are not only those who control power in the modern West, with NATO and the European Union, but Gog and Magog are also those who control power in Israel. So it's not that they're pursuing an eschatological agenda. More than that, worse than that, they're taking the Jews on a ride. And it's the last ride on which they'll ever go. And at the end of this road there will be the utter destruction of the Jews. And so mine is a solitary voice, Maria, because I have recognized that there are Jews who are righteous people. I just had a session in Wembley in London with 2 Jewish rabbis, and these were very good people. These were men who showed integrity, supporting the Palestinians, and they were rabbis. And so I have to say to the Jewish world, it's time for you to get off that train, because those who control power in Israel are taking you to your destruction. The eschatology that they are planting in your minds is that we are taking Israel to become the ruling state in the world, and therefore that validates our claim, and that soon the Messiah is going to come and rule the world from Jerusalem. It's not the Messiah, it's the Antichrist.
Yes, and that was actually my next question, because Netanyahu is doing it in coalition with America. Of course, you know the famous story about the perfect red heifer that's been breeded in order to be sacrificed in Al-Aqsa Mosque. Those cows are actually breeded in United States, in Texas, in evangelistic farms. And this August, at the beginning of the month, they had like a rehearsal burning of the perfect red heifer. In the same month, we had Smotrich or some other guy from Israeli government who went to pray in Al-Aqsa, although it's forbidden for Jews. And I have to ask you, if the war spreads, are they going to bomb Al-Aqsa because of their plan to bring up the Armageddon? Because it looks like they're heading that way.
I have always held the view, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but I've held the view that Al-Aqsa Masjid will be destroyed by a convenient earthquake. And so they say, you can't blame us for it. It's an act of nature. But whatever it is, they will have to destroy Masjid al-Aqsa in order to build the temple. The Messiah that they consider to be the Messiah who will come, cannot declare himself, I am the Messiah from Jerusalem, unless and until the temple is rebuilt. So, but I think that's one of the last things that they will do, to destroy Masjid al-Aqsa. But the Great War which is coming is more important. That Great War can be triggered, I hope I'm wrong, when it is clear that Ukraine is losing the war and Ukraine is close to collapse. Then in order to save face, in order not to face the embarrassment of having Russia winning the war, they can trigger off the Great War. If that is so, then we probably have less than a year or 2 years left before the nuclear war takes place. Maria, I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong, but I have to explain to you, this is a possibility. I'm not afraid of the Great War. I'm not afraid to die. Any pious Christian or pious Muslim or pious Jew who is not afraid to die, because life and death are in the hands of the Lord God. Ask any pious Jew, he'll tell you, we're not afraid to die. Ask any pious Christian, he'll tell you, so too with the Muslim. We're not afraid to die. If the Lord God has written death, we accept it. What is important is what comes after the Great War. And our prophet has said, and his is a solitary voice, no one else has said this in all of history. Only Prophet Muhammad, Allah's blessings be upon him, he said that 7 years or 7 months after the Great War, a Muslim army will conquer Constantinople. Since he used the name Constantinople, I can use the name Constantinople because that's the Sunnah. You can change the name if you want, but you cannot script me, you cannot brainwash me. My prophet used the name Constantinople, therefore I can do it. The Muslim army will conquer Constantinople 7 years after the Great War. So the world of Islam will suddenly wake up. And Muslim governments around the world are going to be moving out. The people will be taking over 7 years after the Great War. When the Muslim army conquers Constantinople, why would it do so? My answer, you may accept it or don't, this is my answer. My answer is we are going to conquer Constantinople so that we can return Hagia Sophia to those to whom it rightfully belongs. I hope these words can reach the government of Turkey. I hope these words can reach the Turkish people, because the Quran prohibits you from taking a Christian cathedral and transforming it into a masjid. Go to the Quran and see. The Muslim has an obligation to fight, if necessary, to protect that cathedral rather than to take it and transform it into a masjid. When we return Hagia Sophia to those to whom it rightfully belongs, and when the name of the city is restored to Constantinople, and when those who have been driven out of their homes, where they lived for thousands of years, Armenian Christians, innocent people who were being oppressed and then driven out and genocide, we say to the Armenian Christians, come back to your homes, come back, let's live as brothers and sisters together in fraternity. That is going to bring about the reconciliation that I'm struggling for, and friendship and alliance between our two peoples. This comes after the Great War.
And if we survive the Great War. What is actually the role of Russia at this moment in our time, in our space? In this eternal fight between good and bad, good and evil, the oppressors and the oppressed, where is Russia and where is Serbia? What are we supposed to do?
I was in Moscow in February of last year, attending a conference on multipolarity. I was surprised that they gave me such a high status in the conference. I was the only religious scholar, and I was an Islamic scholar in that conference. And after the conference was over, I was again surprised when I was invited to join a small group, about 15 of us, for dinner with Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov. And all the talk in the dinner was about politics and economics, and the minister was in a good mood. He took off his tie, and he was joking and laughing. And I enjoyed the discussion until I got a chance to speak. I asked the minister whether I could speak to him about the Quran and Russia. He must have been surprised, and there was silence, total silence in the room, because the Russians are very serious when it comes to religion. When I had spoken to him about the Quran and Russia, what is Russia's destiny? The minister then asked me whether I can write on the subject for him. So Maria, I then spent the next 5 months writing the Quran and Russia's destiny. And in that book, I broke new ground. Our people will be very unfamiliar with the things I've said in that book, the Quran and Russia's destiny. I hope to launch the book next year, April, in Moscow, inshallah. And Professor Alexander Dugin wrote the foreword to the book. In that book, I argue that one of the missions that Russia has in the world is to block or to checkmate Gog and Magog, which is modern Western civilization. And that is taking place now in Ukraine. The implications of a Russian success in Ukraine would be that Gog and Magog will now no longer come from different parts of the world to the Holy Land, but the Gog and Magog will be only in the Holy Land. That is, those who rule over Israel today. And the destruction of Gog and Magog will take place by the Lord God himself in Jerusalem. But this will be at that time when Jesus returns. The most powerful voice in history to have prophesied that Jesus will come back one day, tell this to the Balkans for me, is the voice of Prophet Muhammad. Allah's blessing be upon him. We know when Jesus will return. We know what he will do when he returns because our prophet has spoken about it.
And what about Serbia? What should we do?
There are those in Serbia whose hearts have not as yet been corrupted, who are a people who sincerely live for the truth, regardless of the price they have to pay. But unfortunately, there are others who worship money and worship wealth. So those who worship money and worship wealth will be gravitating towards the European Union. But those who have faith in their hearts and who stand up for truth and justice will recognize that the rich of the world are the oppressors of the world, sucking the blood of the poor amongst mankind. So how can we be comfortable in the embrace of the rich when they are sucking the blood of mankind? How do we explain economic slavery around the world? Economic migration, all of Africa leaving, going to Europe, going to the United States. Trump's want to build a wall. The Europeans don't know what to do, how to keep these people out. This is paradise. We don't want slaves over here ruining our lives, okay? So Serbia has to choose. And the choice of those who have faith in their hearts, and I am here in the Balkans to touch their hearts, to tell them, you are a Christian people. You should live faithfully to the truth. And a people who have faith in their hearts would not be a people who will worship wealth, particularly when that wealth is stuck in blood of the people, sucking the wealth of the world. Serbia has to stand for truth. And people who stand for truth will be on this side of history, not that side.
And that means having closer relations with Russia rather than the Western countries.
Russia is leading the world in standing up and resisting the Western world. And we take pride in the fact that Russia is doing that courageously. But China is supporting Israel. Even though China is communist, China is standing up towards economic oppression and monetary oppression and challenging the monetary system. And China is leading BRICS. China is leading BRICS, and Russia is supporting China. And that mountain of gold that the West has, that mountain of gold is now crumbling. And that is probably going to be one of the reasons why the nuclear war is coming.
Let me go back, and that would be my final question about the nuclear war. Last one, yes. About the nuclear war. The reason I was worried because of that sentence that Netanyahu said about the end of times is that they do have nuclear bombs. Do you think that Israel will use it?
That's a difficult question for me to answer, but what I do know is that Pax Judaica, although it is now beginning, cannot be firmly established without the nuclear war. The reasoning behind this is that you have the two superpowers in the world. On the one hand, you have the Russian-Chinese alliance. On the other hand, you have modern Western civilization with NATO. And Pax Judaica cannot be established with these two still there. So the reasoning is that if you have nuclear war, they will mutually destroy each other. And what remains of the world after the Great War will be very easy for Israel to handle, to become the new ruling state in the world. So how will the nuclear war be triggered off? Nobody knows. But it's most likely going to be some false flag act that's going to trigger off the nuclear war. There are other experts, much more learned than I am, who can offer an opinion what can possibly trigger off the nuclear war. That is not my field of expertise. But that the nuclear war is coming, it has to come because Pax Judaica needs it.
Dear Sheikh, thank you very much for this interview. It was a pleasure.
You're most welcome, Maria.
Thank you, and hope to see you again soon in Belgrade.
I'll be very happy, Maria. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.